Creating Synergy, podcast number 1 of many. Today we have Michelle Holland, serial entrepreneur, director of SynergyIQ, the culture and strategy department, I guess you would say. She is a co-founder of another online music program called Sammy, and also the author of 3 amazing books, one being her very, very latest, Culture Inc., which is, normally there's a banner of Culture Inc. There it is. Beautiful, right in front of me.
The book, that's right.
So welcome,
that is the book.
Michelle. Thank you for
Thanks,
joining
Dan.
us.
Thank you for having me.
You had no choice. So first and foremost, we'll start off with being director of strategy and culture. How did you get into this world of culture, leadership, strategy?
I've had a very long journey in that space. I started as an accountant, funnily enough, in my career, but quickly decided that numbers were not my thing. But I really liked problem solving, so I started in human resources. I transitioned over to human resources. And after many years of being in human resources and discovering all of the things that kept going wrong in human resources, like getting into, conflicts and all the rest of it, and helping managers deal with issues and deal with their culture and whatnot, I recognize that there's only so much you can do when you feel like you're putting Band-Aids on all the time, taking people to the commission and fixing problems after the fact. I really recognize that actually the real work is in the setup work, so in culture and in leadership. So I focused most of my career in that space. So even when I was working as a senior HR strategist and manager in a number of organizations, my focus was always on the culture. It was always on supporting the leadership. It was always on working with the executive to ensure that their business was set up to enable the people to do their jobs. I still managed the HR departments in those roles as well. So we had people who were, going around and fixing the problems as they needed to be fixed. But my world was very much on that strategic HR, looking at the workforce overall, looking at the culture overall. And I quickly, not so quickly, it took me quite some time, but eventually I gathered my courage up and decided to start SynergyIQ. And at that time, I was just, this is 6 years ago now, was working as a freelancer, working with businesses around the place, just doing some leadership coaching and working with them on their culture as well, and doing some consulting in that space. And after a few years, recognized that there was a real need in this area, that businesses were asking for help all the time. So decided that SynergyIQ needed to be a little bit bigger, which brings us to today, which is we focus on culture, leadership and change. We have a number of people that are supporting businesses across Australia, which is really exciting, that the business has grown to where it's grown so fast and so far. So that's been exciting for me, and it's enabled me as well to be able to focus even more strongly in the culture and the leadership space.
Beautiful. So how's the business going?
Seems to be going pretty well. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, just got to get a plug in there.
Yeah,
forgot to introduce myself at the start.
Yes, that's right. I've got some great business partners, so yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, so it seems to be growing quite quickly. Some bit of traction.
And I think
to be doing some good work.
Absolutely, yes.
Culture and change.
In culture, culture and change, and the leadership space as well. We've got projects going on in all those different areas and different businesses around the place. So the business is going very well, and just growing and growing and growing. So
Beautiful.
It's I'm pleased. I'm happy.
And so being an author of Culture Inc., you would. And obviously knowing a lot about the industry, you would see some pretty fantastic leaders out in the world, and you would also see some quite indifferent leaders, I guess. Tell me, what do you believe is a great characteristic or great characteristics of leadership?
Great characteristics of leadership. Well, to be honest, it actually depends on the day of what I focus on, because there's a number of things to being a great leader. Fundamentally, however, it's about being a good human. Like if you're a good human, you can be a great leader. And that's, I think, where it starts. I've seen a lot of really, really good people in good leadership, like good leaders, really beat themselves up because they feel like they have to measure up to this caricature of leadership that we, authors, and, I'm one of those people as well. So we put out there into the world almost this unrealistic version of what a leader should and could be. For me, it's always just be human first. So, we recognize that as a leader, we are human and we are dealing with people. And that, I think, is fundamental, that fundamental characteristic.
I heard a saying once, actually I saw someone walking down the street and they had humankind on their T-shirt.
Yeah.
And then underneath it said, be both.
Yeah,
and
nice.
I went, brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. This is pretty much along what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. We should get some of those T-shirts printed. That's great. It is really. I mean, it's not about... not managing things the way they need to be managed. There's leadership and then there's management. And great businesses need both. So they need people who are going to be able to manage the stuff. They need to manage the projects. They need to manage the outcome. They have to manage the finances. They have to manage those things. Like, they have to be able to manage. And they need people who are going to lead, that they're going to have the vision, they're going to have the direction, they're going to see the bigger picture, they're going to be able to inspire people and create an environment where people can feel motivated and ready to work and give their best.
Is that something you see happen quite often, where a leader will be promoted, I guess, purely based on their technical skills and then fall short on their leadership ability?
Yeah, I think it's happening less and less. When I say it's happening less and less, I think the desire to just promote based on technical is happening less and less. People recognize that to move into a leadership position or to promote someone to a leadership position, they need to have not just management skills, but also leadership skills. I still don't see it happening as often as it could. If there is a choice between, are you a great, manager of budget over are you a great leader, the manager of budget still seems to be winning. What is the technical element? So we still have the, to lead an engineering team, you have to be an engineer. So it's the technical that's being prioritized over the leadership, whereas leadership is actually a transferable skill because it's about who you are, not just about what you're doing. Yeah. So managing, and you might, to manage a engineering team, you might have to have that understanding of how to manage an engineering team, but whether you need to be an engineer to be the leader of that team, to be the CEO of an engineering company, I would challenge that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Steve Jobs' famous quote, don't hire great people and tell them what to do.
Absolutely, that's right.
To tell you what to do.
Totally. So you hire people to do their job and allow them to do it. Give them guidance, give them boundaries, give them all of those things that they need to have. So, I guess going back to your question about the characteristics of great leaders, it really is about being able to create a inspirational vision for the future, which helps people to get inspired about where they're going. That, to me, is probably the fundamental of great leadership. When we start breaking it down into people leadership and, technical leadership, functional leadership, all of those sort of things, then there's other characteristics, that we could talk about. But fundamentally, it's really be a good human, treat people like they're human in a nice way. Yeah. In a kind way, not nice, in a kind way. Clear as kind. And think about yourself in that position. That's, I think, the fundamental really is, what do I need to feel inspired to do my job? If you can answer that question, it's generally similar for others around you.
How do you take into account being nice and kind when pressure's on from above? Is that when true leadership is shown in those situations?
Well, I think, it's definitely where the leadership rubber hits the road, so to speak. When things are not going well in businesses, that's when the challenge of leadership really starts. You can still be kind even when you're going through a really difficult period. If anything, it's even more important to be kind. You don't necessarily have to be nice. So nice, I kind of get rid of that word.
Yep.
It's about being kind, because if an organization is going through significant change, and obviously this is part of what we do on a daily basis, is work with businesses that are going through massive amounts of change. There might be redundancies, there might be a complete shift in the way people are working, people are scared. To be able to be kind in that space, being able to be really clear about the communication, being clear about what's happening, being as transparent as possible, as early as possible. These are the things that actually make great leadership.
Is kind another word for constructive?
I think kind is definitely part of constructive. Yeah, it could be. I'd have to think about that, whether they are interchangeable, but pretty close to being interchangeable. I mean, constructive is I have to think about that one, I think. I might have to park that one for the next
we often
next
hear
podcast.
giving constructive feedback, I guess, is a true mark of a leader. Is that when you say clear as kind, and we'll touch on Brene Brown a bit later. We love Brene here at SynergyIQ. Clear as kind, meaning quality feedback, transparency, constructive. Is that word come into it or not?
Yeah, it does. It does. Definitely transparent and definitely constructive comes into it. I don't think you can be kind without being constructive in it. That's probably a way of because otherwise you're dropping into that nice place instead of the kind place. So kind, really, when we talk about, clear as kind, and we do use that, we use that in our own culture, obviously, as well as when I'm teaching people leadership and doing different programs, we use clear as kind a lot. And it really is about transparency. It's about what do they need to know to be able to get their job done? What do they need to know so that they're not sitting there fearful about what's happening, because if I'm keeping stuff to myself that I know is actually making somebody nervous out there, then that's not very kind, is it?
No.
If I'm not giving feedback to somebody because I'm afraid of how they're going to react, I'm actually holding back an opportunity for them to get better. That's not kind.
No.
So being able to be kind, I think it's more of a motivation thing. Constructive is probably the way in which you do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
fair.
that's probably the way I would put it.
Thanks for clearing that up.
That's quite all right. Clear as kind.
So, given that, leaders today in pressure environments, I want to just sort of unpack this a little bit more, often turn to old habits.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we, as a leadership conglomerate, get better at managing some of those old behaviours that come out to play when the pressure is on?
Yeah, look, and it is classic. It's absolutely classic that when the heat is on, we'll default to whatever our default position usually is. So it might be that we default to being a people pleaser because that keeps us safe. Whatever keeps us safe really is what we tend to default to in situations of pressure. So if we have a very, well-practiced leadership position of being constructive and open and transparent and kind, if it's well-practiced, that actually could be our default position when we're going through pressure. However, if it's not well practiced, it might be a new position, because that's a lot of like people that we work with. It's, we're introducing them to new concepts. They're trying their hardest. They're trying to flip their behavior from being defensive into constructive behavior.
So it's when well practiced. Awareness comes first.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So anytime we're trying to shift a behavior, shift anything, awareness has to come first. So I need to be aware of what I'm doing before I can actually change anything.
The way it makes other people feel.
Absolutely. So, and it's about acceptance as well, right? So I need to be able to go, I'm aware that by holding back information, it's detrimental to the people that I'm working with. And I need to accept that it's my job to make sure they're not uncomfortable in this situation. So what then action do I need to do to create something different? And that might be really uncomfortable for me to do, because normally I'm like, I keep things close to my chest. I don't want to share because, knowledge is power. It might be that I don't want to say anything because I don't want to hurt their feelings and I don't want them to be upset with me, particularly if I'm delivering bad news. Nobody likes to deliver bad news. I don't think there's one person on this planet that would say they enjoy having a, tough performance conversation with someone, or a redundancy conversation with someone, or a this has to change, you can't do that anymore conversation. They're not fun conversations. Nobody loves to do them, but it is part of that role that you take on. It's the obligation, what I call the obligation and the privilege of leadership.
We did a couple of workshops together a few times before.
We did? a couple of workshops a few times.
Many,
sure did.
Many. And one of the ways in we described that was leaning into discomfort.
Yes,
Can you
very much so.
Expand on that a bit?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I was having a conversation with a group of leaders this morning about this exact thing, because we quite often say, we need to lean into that discomfort, or, great leaders are comfortable being uncomfortable. And I don't necessarily believe that we ever get comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's always a level of uncertainty that we're in. But what we can do is we feel it and we do it anyway. So, the definition of courage is not that I'm a superhero and I'm going to fly in and save the day. The definition of courage is I feel the fear and I do it anyway. So that's leadership, so leaning into the discomfort. I know that having that conversation is going to make me uncomfortable, and I need to actually lean into that. I need to be okay with the fact that I'm uncomfortable. I also need to be okay, so this is the acceptance part, be okay that you're going to be uncomfortable when we're having this conversation as well. Because if I can't be okay with that, I'm then going to go,
find ways to avoid.
But if Dan's not going to be comfortable, then I can't have that conversation.
You change your language almost.
You
to
totally change your language.
Which is sometimes good, but it can be an opportunity lost in it.
Oh, look, as soon as you try to please somebody else and to change your behavior and your language because you think that's what they expect of you, you're done there and then. You need to be, this is where that authenticity comes into it as well. You need to be able to be authentic in yourself, utilize your own style. Not everybody's the same. Not all leaders are the same. So, when we go back to that conversation about characteristics of great leaders, when you look at great leaders, you could probably pull out things that are very similar. And, there's a million blogs. You Google characteristics of great leadership on Google and you'll get 8 million hits, right? So people do that. But fundamentally, it's about who am I? How am I turning up? What's my style of leadership? And how can I get the best out of the people around me and myself so that we can actually deliver what we're promising to deliver? It's kind
of values, personal values will
absolutely
play a big part in that.
Yes. Fundamentally, your values are what's going to guide you. So
that's that who am I piece.
It's yeah. I mean, one of the other Brene Brown quotes that I love to spruik is, "Who you are is how you lead." So I was delivering a workshop in Sydney just before Christmas, and we were doing values work with this group of I think it was 45 leaders in the room. And we walked in and said, I'm going to do some values work. And we started doing this personal values work. And as they're doing it, I was listening. And I could hear on one table there was a conversation about, why are we doing this? Why are we doing my values? Got nothing to do with it. Shouldn't we be exploring the company values? Because they're a company of leaders, right? So I was listening to that. And so I brought the group back together and said, hey, just want to have a check-in. I've just overheard somebody say, I didn't point them out, somebody say, why are we doing this as a personal, basis on our personal values? And my response to them was, because who we are is how we lead. And if we are not clear about our own personal values, about who we are deep inside, then we're not going to make clear, kind decisions for ourselves or others. Our values is what guides us. It's not just something that we put on little pieces of paper and stick on a wall. They will guide us through our decision making. So personal values are essential. And understanding your personal values, understanding your triggers, what puts you into your values, what puts you out of your values. People who start to step out of their values, that's when discomfort happens.
Yeah.
Like real discomfort.
Yeah, and that's when you can, when the level of self-awareness increases, you can almost call yourself out.
Absolutely.
When you are playing against your own values.
Yeah, and you make decisions based on these things as well. So the same as companies use their company values to make decisions. Well, that's the intent anyway. It doesn't always happen that way. But the intent is that we have a set of company values so that when we are faced with a decision, then we have a guide for decision making. It's the same as personal values. I don't know if you can be a bad leader because you're a leader or you're not a leader. You could be someone who doesn't demonstrate leadership. But recently I had a situation where a very senior person told me about their manager, which, senior global company, doing some really terrible, terrible things that I thought left us in the 80s.
Yeah.
But are still happening today.
Yeah.
So that to me is a challenge. That's a challenge when I'm still seeing in 2020 behavior that should have been, gone. Should is a 4-letter word. So, but that we shouldn't be seeing.
No.
In 2020.
It's pretty remarkable. I do know that story. We won't go into that
No,
one.
we won't. But it does. It was a jaw dropper, but it's still happening. We still get phone calls about, behaviors at work. We still get phone calls about managers and leaders, so-called leaders yelling at people in the workplace today. And if that stuff is still happening, that's telling me that there is a big leadership gap. Because if that can happen within a business, there's something wrong going on at the top. Yeah. And I don't want to, bash the CEO and the executive team. That's not what this is about. But if that's happening within your business, you need to pull your socks up and do something about it.
There's lack of alignment to the values.
There's definitely a lack.
Holding people accountable to the values as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, just while we're on talking about great leaders and not so great leaders, one of the greatest, I guess, and the greatest researchers would be one of your biggest influences, Brené Brown. We've dropped her name a few times.
Here we have.
Before, along with J.K. Rowling.
Don't get me started on Harry Potter. We'll be here all day.
We won't. No, so just tell us a little bit more about Brené, I guess, and the work that she does that really inspires you and the work that you bring to your clients and just your people around you.
Yeah, great. Yes, I've been a big fan of Brené Brown for a really long time. I was introduced to her work back in 2013. Funnily enough, at that time, I actually rejected it because she was talking about vulnerability, and I was not ready to walk into that space. But a number of years later, and a lot more study in the work that Brené has done. I essentially, for the last probably 2 or 3 years, have embedded a lot of the principles of her work into the work that I do, whether it's one-on-one coaching or whether it's leadership programs. I've always embedded her work. Previously, I think if people don't know who Brené is, I would be surprised because most people do, but there are still 1 or 2 people that don't know who Brené Brown is. She is probably the world's most renowned expert in vulnerability, shame, and belonging. And what are we in now? 2020. So in 2018, it would have been now. She released a book called Dare to Lead. And Dare to Lead was her work, which was very much based in a one-on-one individual social work counselling kind of space. It was very much about the individual person, who I am as a person. She took that work and did some research around how that work actually impacts in the workplace and how leaders can embody this work and become better leaders. So she spent about 7 years doing this research. So she took her social work, who I am kind of work, and put it into to workplaces. Now, the reason she did that was because she was getting phone calls from Google and Pixar and Nike and all the rest of it going, hey, we've read all your work. This is awesome. It's changing my life. How can I bring this to my team? How can I bring this to the workplace? Yeah. So she wrote Dare to Lead to enable that work to be brought to the workplace.
So is it a step-by-step guide on how to become a better leader? Is that or is it stepping into vulnerability?
Yeah,
that you said,
it is. It is a guide, definitely. I don't know if it's a step-by-step guide because it's all about personal leadership journey. It's a personal leadership journey. Okay. And it's very hard to do a step-by-step because what it's all about is accepting vulnerability, accepting that we're all vulnerable, and what does that mean for us? So it's really about, there's 4 key skill sets in Dare to Lead, which teaches courageous leadership. So that's what the book is all about. So when I read that book, I was so excited because I was, already embedding a lot of her work into the leadership work that I was doing. And I know a number of other people have been doing that as well. Vulnerability is talked about, I swear, at every conference nowadays. Yeah. But
especially after
after her TED Talk, yeah.
And Netflix special.
And absolutely, and everything else. So when I read Dare to Lead, I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly the sort of stuff I want to be teaching the people that we work with in leadership. And, I just had this kind of, wouldn't it be great if she just developed a leadership program and I could go off and learn her leadership program and bring that back and put it into place? Well, about a month later, she released to her network, hey, we're going to be doing Dare to Lead facilitation training. Apply now. And
you were one of the lucky ones to be selected.
I was in the very first cohort of the Dare to Lead program. So
you met Brene Brown.
I did meet Brene Brown.
I do know this. I'm just
I know you know
putting
this.
Michelle on for everyone else. No,
I did meet Brene.
So tell, was she like? Was she tall? She's short.
She's shorter than me.
Is she shorter than you?
She's shorter than me. I couldn't believe it. She seems a lot taller, but I think that's just her presence. She's an amazing person. And she's a very authentic leader in herself. She practices what she preaches. That's part of the fundamental things that I learned being in the room with her. But I was lucky enough to be in the room with her for 3 days and learning the Dare to Lead program that she'd created with her team, which essentially takes the Dare to Lead book and embeds it for people within the workplace, which is amazing. So I got to be one of the first facilitators to go through that program with Brene. So I flew over to San Antonio, Texas. Never been to Texas before. Was expecting a bunch of cowboys to be walking down the street, but there wasn't. No. It was a very, very lovely, lovely town. Spent 3 days with Brene, and she facilitated the full 3 days as well.
Great.
Her team was around her. It was just amazing. Her facilitation skills are astounding as well. So I was very fortunate. The cool thing is that we actually went through the program ourselves at the same time as her teaching us about the research that sat behind it. So it was a real deep dive for me. And I'd been working with Brene's work personally for about 2 years. And sitting in that room, that was the first time that vulnerability, because remember I got introduced in 2013, so this was 2018. It was the first time that the vulnerability thing sunk in for me. And I went, oh my God, yes, vulnerability is freaking essential to be a leader. You have to be able to embrace.
That's a discomfort thing?
Total discomfort, yeah. It's so the definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So you name me a time.
So uncertainty, risk, emotional exposure.
Emotional exposure, yeah. So anytime you feel a sense of risk, you feel a sense of uncertainty, you feel a sense of emotional exposure, you're in vulnerability. Now, I would challenge any manager, people manager or leader to tell me a time where they haven't walked into a room with one of their people and not felt those three things. So it is an essential part of being a leader. The real key to that is acceptance of vulnerability as part of leadership. That's where that leaning into discomfort really comes into play. So and these are the things that we teach in the Dare to Lead program.
You came back, and we were very lucky as a team at SynergyIQ to go through the program itself. And I think for us, we went from strength to strength, purely not because we deep dive into our own psyche, I guess, and behaviours. However, we got to know the people in the room, and what not made them tick, but what really meant where their values laid and what meant a lot to them. So I encourage a lot. So just with that, you offer programs publicly and.
So last year I think we put through about 65 people through the Dare to Lead program, either internal or external, and that it was every time I run this program, I feel humbled and privileged by the sharing that people do in the room, because it's a true inside-out leadership program. So, there's programs out there that'll teach you the step-by-step guide to having a performance conversation. This program actually teaches you and helps you to prepare yourself to get the most out of that conversation, to prepare yourself to be able to walk into that discomfort and enable somebody else to feel uncomfortable so that you can get the best result for those people. Because if you're unable to let them feel uncomfortable, then they're not going to get the best out of it either. So this is, Brene actually calls it a primer course, which I quite love. You put the primer on before you paint the wall. So this sits under every single program that you could, run in a business. So if you want to run a bullying and harassment course, for example, you have to have leaders that are actually willing to have the courageous conversation around that. If you're doing diversity and inclusion programs in your workplace, you have to have daring leaders having conversations that are really uncomfortable and saying, you know what, we want to have a diverse workforce, yet every single person that's sitting around this executive team and this senior management team has a white face, and we need to do something different here. And they're uncomfortable conversations to have. And if you don't have the skills of being a daring and courageous leader, then it's hard, because you might get kicked, you might fall down, and if you don't have the skills to get yourself back up again, that's tough. That's a tough place to be. So this program, it is an amazing program. I can't say enough about it. And every time I run it as a facilitator, it's like a little mini therapy session for me too. So I'm like, oh my God, I thought I'd worked that one out. I'll just write that one down and talk about that later.
I've seen your book. It's got 20,000 posts.
It does.
So moving on to 2020.
2020.
So we're in 2020 now.
Can you believe it?
Which is pretty good.
I can't believe it.
The large scale change that is happening across all industries at the moment, specifically digital, but all industries are going through radical amounts of change. What type of leader will take us through the next decade? And what are some tips and tricks, I guess, or some starting points for businesses to start thinking, all right, we need to handle change better, deal with change on a different level to what we did before? Yeah,
absolutely. Look, I think, we've been going through quite a significant, change. They call it the digital era. The last 10 years have pretty much been the digital era. So that's not stopping anytime soon. The transition to more automation, the transition to more technological advancements, the ability to do most things online, the communication challenges that we have as well, the new generations coming into the workforce that are very much communicating with their phones, and they communicate by looking down, not looking into other people's eyes. That's just how they communicate. It is a bit of a worry. So the socialization skills that are going to be needed when this next generation goes into the workplace is really important. And I think for leaders into the future, that's one element that they're going to have to deal with. So it's not just this whole we're going to transition into a new digital age, and I have to get all the baby boomers to understand that the computers are now ruling the world. The next generation, they're not going to have that challenge. The challenge they're going to have is actually teaching them socialization skills, that ability to walk across the office and interact with another human being in a way that's actually constructive and kind. That's going to be the things that they're going to have to be teaching.
Is another expectation of this new breed, I guess, the expectation that things should just work?
Totally. I mean, technology is their world nowadays, right? So it's like if I'm walking into a workplace and the tech is really old, they're going to be frustrated and challenged by that.
So is that an issue around staff retention then?
It could be. It could be. I mean, it's they're brand new going into the workplace right now. The other thing that they're looking for is a bigger sense of purpose. We've seen that with what we call the millennials, which seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger as a generation. It used to be 30s and whatnot, but now it's like 40 to 15. I think it just keeps growing and growing. But the group of people that we call the millennials have been coming into the workplace looking for more meaning in their work, more purpose. And it's really interesting because actually, some of people, when you talk about these young people coming into the workplace, they say they're not loyal. They don't stick around. They are really loyal. And when they find a business that provides them with that purpose, that innate purpose, that they feel like they're doing something meaningful, they feel like they're doing something good, they feel like they're able to grow and change and contribute, they will stay. They will absolutely stay. It's when they can't feel that stuff, not just, and the technology's crappy, but when they can't feel that stuff, that's when they'll go, you know what, I actually don't have to stay. Whereas in the 50s and 40s and whatnot, yes, you had to go get a job and you had to stay in that job because, it wasn't the done thing to move around. Now, it's like, you're in a job for 2 to 3 years and people are like, whoa, I've been there so long. It's just the way it is.
So that ties in with the culture of the business then, and leadership really drive that culture.
Oh, absolutely. That's right. And look, when we go back to thinking about what the leader's role in all of that, it's very much about those true, authentic leadership skills that they need, which is that setting the vision, making sure the environment is set up so that the people that you're hiring in, they can actually just get on with things and they can get on and do their job. They're not going to know everything. There are still things that we have to teach them. They're not going to walk out of university into a job and know exactly how you run your business. They're not going to know exactly how to deal with your customers. They're not going to know exactly how to interact in a work-based environment. That's stuff that we have to teach. And I think the sooner that leaders and others within the workplace get that the new people coming in, they're not work ready. But guess what? Neither were you when you started, right? You had
still not ready.
That's right, because it was back. You think about in the 60s, 70s, whatever. A lot of the time, people walked into the workplace and they had what was called a foreman. And the foreman was the mentor. They were the person that took care of the new people coming in and taught them the ways of being. Why would we think that anything's different now? So our job as a leader, and this is probably the fundamental job, is to set up the environment of the workplace to enable people to be able to perform at their best. That's it.
So say that again. Enable people.
To enable people. So to create the environment to enable people to perform at their best.
Brilliant.
So there's lots in that, obviously, about
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you create that environment.
That's why I want you to say it. Yeah.
But that is fundamental what it is. That's my
Yeah.
job as a leader, is to create the environment. It's not to inspire you. It's not to motivate you. It's not to change you. It's not to make you happy. It's to create an environment where you can be inspired, you can be motivated, and you can be happy. That's my job as a leader, create the environment.
Good stuff. Right. Now, part of the podcast,
Uh-oh. I don't think I signed up for this. I'm out.
we're going to just shoot off, because we're trying to keep these things around half an hour, and I'm probably guaranteed we've gone
Way
over that. Is to just ask some quick fire questions, put you on the spot,
Okay.
test your leadership skills, I guess. No.
My thinking skills.
So, if you could put something on a bumper sticker, what would it say?
Well, there's many things. I mean, Clear as Kind's already on a bumper sticker, so I can't use
Yeah.
that one.
You've got it on your mug as well.
That's right. Yeah, I do. I think something that I say quite a lot, which taps into my curiosity, is the question not asked is the question unanswered.
The question
Not asked
not asked.
is the question left unanswered.
Yeah, I like that.
So that's gone on my T-shirt.
I said bumper sticker, but that's good.
Well, my bumper sticker as well.
So if you had a soundtrack of your life, give me one song that would be on that soundtrack.
They're all 80s songs,
Yeah.
much to your distress. But
I was born an 80s boy.
yeah, I know. Probably something like Walking on Sunshine or Wake Me
yeah.
Up Before You Go.
We built this city.
We built this city. That's
Is that 80s?
That's 80. I think that's 80s, late 80s.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it depends. Or if I'm feeling a little dark and depressed, it's Bring Me to Life by Evanescence.
Oh, okay.
That would be my other.
That is a ripper. She has an amazing voice.
She has an amazing voice. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, this is quick fire questions, but
Yeah,
I'm going
quick
really
fire,
slow.
yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to just, okay. The lesson what's the lesson that's taking the longest to learn?
The acceptance of vulnerability is
Yes,
probably,
I was gonna
acceptance
say,
of vulnerability
that's where I was
is
going
is
with
the
you
one
mentioned
that's
earlier.
taken me the
Yeah.
longest.
I
Yeah.
do listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so finish this sentence. Leadership is?
Leadership is essential.
Essential.
It's essential. Yeah.
It is really.
I think without leadership, then businesses come to a halt. And leadership is whatever the person makes it into. Because it's a personal journey.
It is.
Mm.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I actually listen to a lot of audio books and
What are you audio booking right
my
now?
audio booking. So the audio book that I'm listening to right now, actually I'm listening to two. One is Quiet by Suzanne Cain.
Yeah.
Which is all about introverts and stuff. I'm about halfway through that one. And I got a bit distracted into an audio. It's not necessarily a book, but it's, a lecture series by Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, which is awesome.
Brilliant. People can look into that.
Yes, I can.
On the reading, what is one of the best, other than Brené's leadership program series?
Yeah.
All her books are amazing, by the way, so start there.
Oh, yeah.
But what's another leadership book that you would recommend to people if they've read all the Brené stuff?
If they've read all the Brené stuff and they really like Brené's kind of writing style, then anything by Simon Sinek is good as well. Leaders Eat Last is great. His latest one is awesome. And also Daniel Pink. Daniel Pink is very underrated. He doesn't have the same celebrity status as some of them do, but his work, he researched quite deeply. His latest book, which is called When, I think it is. It's all about timing.
Okay.
Timing of life. So when's the right thing to do during the day, during your life? What happens when?
Yeah, wow.
It's a really interesting book, particularly if you're, more advanced, let's say, in your career and life.
So Simon Sinek for the starters?
Simon Sinek for the starters, yeah.
And then for the more advanced, Daniel Pink.
Yeah, Daniel Pink. And he's a really accessible writer as well. He writes
I've read a few
beautifully. Yes, yeah.
To Sell as Human was one of my
Yes, To Sell as Human is excellent, yeah. And A Whole New Mind is one of my favourite books.
So what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Write books. Well, actually, I write.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I do for fun. I'm working on a fantasy novel at the moment.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm creating a
I'll be the first to read that.
new world. So that I do for fun.
Excellent. And what's your best dad joke?
This is the one that I use all the time. I love this one. 2 elephants fall off a cliff. Boom, boom.
That's horrible. And that's why
It's a dad joke,
why
it's
it's
supposed
good.
to
Yeah.
be.
As a dad, I can appreciate that.
That's exactly
Brilliant.
right.
Well done.
To be terrible.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That
No
is
problem. Thank you.
the end of. Thank you for, me chewing. Well, me asking you all the hard questions, I guess,
No
and what
worries.
leadership means to you and to the rest of the world. So very insightful. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Um,
Glad to be here to have a chat.
We're going to be continuing on with the creating synergy journey.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be yourself and probably myself mainly, but you will be joining
Every
in
so
with
often,
every so
absolutely.
often,
Hold me back.
asking all the hard questions
Yes.
along with me. So
That's right.
looking forward to where this might take us and some of the people that we can speak to.
Yeah, I can't wait because we're going to be talking about, I think in the next few episodes, coaching, both on an individual basis and a team basis, and looking at a few other things like storytelling at work and what that means.
So the flavour of the podcast will be leadership, culture, change, all things
Transformation.
from a personal level to a business level.
Absolutely.
Sounds pretty exciting.
It's pretty good. I can't wait to listen to them.
Well, I think we're going to go on a bit of a transformation journey
I
ourselves
think we
while we're
will.
listening to all these great speakers. So thanks
Totally.
again.